The phone screamed at 2:40, 7 in the morning, shattering my peaceful sleep like glass against concrete. Dad's name glowed on the screen, and his voice cracked through the speaker with desperation I'd never heard before. "Lily, please, you have to help us," he whispered, his words tumbling over each other. Madison lost Sunfield Motors. $11 million, gone. The whole account, terminated. I sat up in my new apartment, staring at the ceiling, remembering how just 8 days ago this same man handed my younger sister complete control of our family's advertising agency. The same business I'd built from 3 employees to 47. The same company where I'd generated 73% of the revenue for 8 straight years. Northwestern University's marketing program had prepared me for corporate warfare, but nothing could have readied me for family betrayal. I graduated summa cum laude in 2015, diving straight into Brennan Creative Agency with the passion of someone who believed merit mattered more than DNA. Grandpa Joe had founded the company in 1967 as a humble print shop in downtown Milwaukee, dreaming of something bigger than business cards and wedding invitations. When Dad inherited the reins in 1995, the agency was worth maybe $200,000. Under my strategic vision and relentless client cultivation, WED grown into a $23 million regional powerhouse. Madison, 3 years my junior, had stumbled through community college with a basic business degree and zero ambition beyond Instagram followers. Shed worked sporadically at the agency for 2 years, handling filing and appointment scheduling while I landed major accounts like Sunfield Motors, Heritage Banking, and Midwest Manufacturing. Every campaign I designed won industry awards. Every client relationship I nurtured generated substantial revenue. Every strategy I implemented exceeded projections. Yet Dad consistently praised Madison's natural people skills while dismissing my accomplishments as aggressive tactics. When I presented the groundbreaking digital campaign that secured Sunfield's 7-figure contract, Dad credited Madison's collaborative input despite her contributing nothing but emoji suggestions for social media posts. The pattern repeated endlessly. My innovations became team efforts. My successes transformed into Madison's leadership potential. My expertise reframed as difficult perfectionism. Mom had initially supported my obvious qualifications for succession, but Dad's constant manipulation gradually wore down her resistance. "Family harmony matters more than business decisions," became her repeated refrain whenever I questioned the increasingly obvious favoritism. Carol genuinely believed that keeping peace between her daughters was more important than acknowledging reality. Madison's sabotage grew bolder as Dad's preference became undeniable. She'd interrupt my client presentations with irrelevant questions, steal my campaign concepts and present them as her own brainstorming, and spread whispered rumors about my being too intense for modern workplace culture. The talented employees I'd hired and trained began walking on eggshells, privately expressing frustration with Madison's incompetence while publicly maintaining neutrality to protect their paychecks. The competition between us wasn't fair because I was competing with merit while Madison competed with manipulation. Shed learned that tears worked better than talent, that charm trumped capability in Dad's evaluation system. Every family dinner became a performance where Madison played the sweet, agreeable daughter while I was cast as the ambitious, demanding one who needed to learn teamwork. But the evening of October 15th shattered every remaining illusion I'd maintained about fairness or respect. Dad had called a routine family dinner at their sprawling suburban home, the same house where I'd spent countless childhood hours dreaming about running the family business someday. The dining room felt different that night, charged with an electric tension I couldn't identify. "I've been meeting with Johnson, Patterson, and Associates for 3 months," Dad announced over Carol's pot roast, his voice carrying the weight of finality. "The business transition paperwork is complete. Madison will assume 100% ownership of Brennan Creative Agency effective November 1st. The words hit me like a freight train carrying broken promises and shattered dreams. Madison's smile spread across her face like spilled wine staining white fabric, triumphant and irreversible. Carol's eyes darted between us, her expression mixing guilt with relief that the decision was finally made. Dad continued explaining legal structures and financial arrangements, his words blurring together as my world collapsed around me. "The lawyers have already filed the papers," he said, pulling thick manila envelopes from his briefcase. Bank account transfers are scheduled for Monday morning. Madison's been ready for this responsibility for years. Ready. The word echoed in my skull like a cruel joke. Ready to run a business Shed never understood, manage clients Shed never cultivated, lead employees Shed never respected. It dedicated my entire adult life to building something magnificent from our family's modest foundation, only to watch it handed to someone who viewed it as an inherited plaything rather than a sacred trust. The revelation wasn't just about business ownership, it was about recognition, respect, and the painful understanding that blood meant more than brilliance in the Brennan family hierarchy. Years of promises about earning my place and proving myself had been elaborate lies designed to keep me working while they prepared to give everything to Madison regardless of qualifications. The following Monday morning arrived like a death sentence disguised as a normal workday. Madison strutted into the office 30 minutes late, carrying designer coffee and radiating the confidence of someone who'd never earned anything through effort. Shed transformed overnight from my submissive younger sister into an insufferably condescending boss, demanding that I submit all client communications through her for approval and quality control. From now on, nothing goes to any account without my signature, she announced during the hastily called staff meeting, her voice dripping with newfound authority. I'm implementing a new management structure that prioritizes collaboration over individual decision-making. The team exchanged confused glances, knowing that my individual decision-making had generated millions in revenue, while Madison's collaboration had produced nothing but workplace tension. Dad had crafted the legal documents with surgical precision, ensuring Madison received complete control, while I retained exactly zero ownership stake, profit sharing, or decision-making authority. Despite generating 73% of company revenue for 8 consecutive years, I was reclassified as an employee at will with no guaranteed future beyond Madison's discretionary approval. The justification speeches began immediately and continued relentlessly. Dad lectured anyone who'd listen about protecting the family legacy and Madison's natural leadership abilities, completely ignoring financial records that contradicted every word. He claimed clients preferred Madison's approachable communication style over my overly aggressive tactics. Despite client feedback consistently praising my strategic thinking and campaign effectiveness, Carol orchestrated family gatherings where business topics were discussed extensively, while I was systematically excluded from conversations about company direction and future planning. Extended family members were told that I'd chosen to step back from leadership responsibilities, creating a narrative that painted my exclusion as personal choice rather than deliberate discrimination. The professional humiliation reached new depths when Madison announced to our entire staff that she was restructuring management hierarchy to ensure better team integration. This meant I would report directly to her despite having hired and trained most of the people in the room. Employees who'd sought my guidance for years were suddenly required to channel all questions through Madison, creating confusion and inefficiency throughout the organization. Madison's interference with client relationships bordered on sabotage disguised as supervision. She inserted herself into meetings with accounts I'd cultivated for years, contradicting established strategies mid-presentation and creating unprofessional confusion about campaign direction. Sunfield Motors executives would ask specific questions about digital targeting or demographic analysis, and Madison would give vague answers about exploring new creative possibilities while I sat silently, forbidden to correct her obvious misunderstandings. The financial manipulation was particularly cruel. Madison revoked my access to company credit cards, requiring her written approval for basic work expenses like client lunches or research materials. She questioned every business decision while demonstrating complete ignorance about operational costs, profit margins, or industry standards. The woman who'd never successfully managed a grocery budget was suddenly micromanaging the financial decisions of seasoned professionals. But the most devastating betrayal came when I discovered Madison had been secretly recording our private conversations for weeks, sharing carefully edited versions with Dad to document my supposed insubordination. Shed twisted my legitimate concerns about campaign quality into evidence of resistance to new leadership, transforming my professional expertise into proof of personal disloyalty. During one particularly frustrating afternoon, I'd privately expressed concerns about Madison's modifications to the Heritage Banking campaign, explaining that her suggested changes would violate federal advertising regulations for financial services. Madison had recorded our conversation, then played an edited version for Dad that made my regulatory knowledge sound like petty criticism of her innovative approaches. "See how she undermines every decision I make," Madison had told Dad, her voice full of wounded innocence. "She can't accept that I'm in charge now. It's like she wants the company to fail just to prove she was right." The recordings were sophisticated character assassinations, removing context and manipulating tone to support predetermined conclusions about my supposedly toxic attitude. Dad accepted these distorted versions as absolute truth, preferring Madison's manufactured narrative over years of evidence about my dedication and competence. The family's coordinated campaign to rewrite history was thorough and relentless. They painted my 8 years of exceptional performance as lucky accidents, my industry recognition as meaningless accolades, my client relationships as temporary conveniences that Madison could easily replace. Every achievement I'd earned through skill and effort was reframed as either team collaboration or fortunate circumstances that anyone could have duplicated. The psychological warfare was exhausting and demoralizing. It built my identity around being the competent, reliable daughter who'd elevated the family business beyond anyone's expectations. Now I was cast as the jealous, difficult sibling who couldn't gracefully accept her sister's superior leadership. The gaslighting was so consistent and comprehensive that I began questioning my own memories of conversations, meetings, and accomplishments. Madison's reign of incompetence began with mandatory morning meetings where I was required to report my daily activities, like a junior intern rather than the senior executive. Had built most client relationships from scratch. She'd sit behind Dad's massive mahogany desk, playing with her phone while I detailed campaign strategies and project timelines, occasionally glancing up to offer meaningless feedback about thinking outside the box or leveraging synergies. The morning of November 8th brought the most humiliating meeting yet. Madison had prepared a PowerPoint presentation titled, "Optimizing Human Resources for Maximum Creative Output," which essentially meant she wanted me to justify my continued employment by proving I could support her vision rather than pursue my own ideas. "Lily's expertise is valuable," she told the assembled staff, her tone suggesting the opposite. "But we need to channel that energy into collaborative success rather than individual achievements. Going forward, she'll focus on implementation while I handle strategy and client relationships." Implementation. The word stung like acid on an open wound. After 8 years of developing winning strategies and cultivating million-dollar relationships, I was being demoted to a glorified project manager whose job was executing Madison's uninformed decisions without question or complaint. Sunfield Motors executives began requesting meetings specifically with me, confused by Madison's sudden insertion into communications they'd previously handled directly with the person who understood their brand identity and target demographics. When Marcus Chen, Sunfield's chief marketing officer, called to discuss their upcoming electric vehicle campaign, Madison answered my phone and insisted all future communications go through her as the primary account strategist. "I appreciate your enthusiasm," Marcus said during a conference call where Madison spent 20 minutes explaining her vision for disrupting traditional automotive marketing, "but we specifically need to discuss demographic targeting data and conversion metrics. Can we schedule time with Lily to review those analytics?" "I handle all strategic discussions now," Madison replied, her voice carrying the artificial confidence of someone pretending to understand complex concepts. "Lily can provide any supporting documentation you need, but I make the final creative decisions." The awkwardness was palpable even through speakerphone. Marcus had worked with me for 3 years developing sophisticated campaigns that consistently exceeded performance benchmarks. He knew Madison had zero experience with automotive marketing, demographic analysis, or digital conversion optimization. The fact that he was being forced to work with someone completely unqualified for strategic discussions was professionally embarrassing for everyone involved. Longtime employees began approaching me privately, expressing frustration with Madison's constant interference and nonsensical directives. Tommy Rodriguez, our senior graphic designer, whispered his concerns during a coffee break about Madison's demand that he make everything more colorful because bright colors test better with millennials, completely ignoring brand guidelines and target audience research. "She wants me to put rainbow gradients on Heritage Banking's corporate identity package," Tommy said, his voice mixing disbelief with despair. I tried explaining that financial institutions need conservative visual approaches to establish trust, but she said I was being too traditional and needed to embrace bold, creative choices. The position was impossible. I could either watch silently while Madison destroyed relationships Id spent years building, or correct her mistakes and be accused of undermining her authority. Every professional instinct screamed at me to protect client interests, but family politics demanded I enable Madison's incompetence rather than preserve campaign quality. Madison's modifications to the Sunfield electric vehicle campaign were particularly catastrophic. Id spent 4 months developing a sophisticated strategy targeting environmentally conscious professionals aged 28 to 55 with household incomes above $75,000. The campaign emphasized reliability, innovation, and long-term cost savings, while addressing common concerns about charging infrastructure and battery longevity. Madison rejected the entire approach in favor of what she called fresh perspective that appeals to younger demographics. Her alternative strategy targeted college students and recent graduates with messaging about being cool and different and visual designs that looked like energy drink advertisements rather than automotive marketing. Electric cars are the future, she announced during the presentation to Sunfield's executive team, so we should market them to future leaders. Young people drive change, so our campaign should make buying electric feel like joining a revolution. Marcus and his team sat in stunned silence as Madison presented concepts that completely misunderstood both their product positioning and target market realities. College students and recent graduates couldn't afford $40,000 vehicles, had limited access to home charging stations, and prioritized immediate transportation needs over environmental considerations. The campaign Shed designed would spend millions reaching people who could never become customers. This is certainly an interesting approach, Marcus said carefully, but our research indicates that early electric vehicle adopters are typically established professionals with higher disposable incomes and stable housing situations that support home charging installations. That's old thinking, Madison replied confidently. We need to disrupt traditional automotive marketing by going after the demographics everyone else ignores. Young consumers have more influence than older buyers realize. The meeting ended with polite promises to review the proposal and consider various strategic approaches, but Marcus' expression made his opinion clear. Sunfield had invested significant resources in market research and demographic analysis, and Madison was essentially telling them their data was wrong while offering no evidence to support her alternative theory. After the meeting, Marcus pulled me aside in the hallway. "What happened to the strategy we discussed last month?" he asked quietly. "The demographic targeting and messaging frameworks we developed together. I wanted to explain Madison's complete overhaul of our established approach, but doing so would violate the unified front directive Shed established. Madison felt the campaign needed a different creative direction. I said, hating myself for enabling such obvious professional malpractice. Different is one thing," Marcus replied, "but this completely ignores everything we know about our customers. I need to discuss this with my team, but I'm concerned about moving forward with a strategy that contradicts our research findings." The breaking point came during Madison's mandatory team alignment meeting, where she demanded I publicly apologize to the entire staff for resistance to change and acknowledge her superior vision for company evolution. Shed prepared talking points for my forced confession, expecting me to admit that my experience was actually a liability, preventing the agency from embracing modern marketing approaches. "Lily's been stuck in old patterns," Madison announced to our assembled colleagues, "and I think it would be healthy for everyone if she acknowledged how her resistance has been holding us back from reaching our true potential." The room fell silent as everyone realized they were witnessing a public execution disguised as a team building exercise. These were people Id hired, trained, and mentored. Several had worked late nights helping me perfect campaigns that won industry awards and generated substantial revenue. Now they were being forced to watch my professional humiliation as entertainment. "I need Lily to recognize that change is necessary," Madison continued, "and that supporting my leadership means letting go of the need to control every decision." But as I sat there, preparing to deliver the humiliating speech Madison had written for me, I discovered something she'd been hiding that changed everything. During the meeting setup, Id noticed unfamiliar email notifications on the conference room computer screen. A quick glance revealed dozens of messages from clients and vendors that should have been forwarded to me but were instead being intercepted and redirected by Madison. She'd been systematically interfering with my email communications for weeks, causing missed deadlines and communication failures that she then blamed on my disorganization. Heritage Banking had received completely incorrect information about their campaign timeline because Madison had modified my response without understanding the project requirements. Midwest Manufacturing's logo approval process had been delayed by 8 days because Madison had redirected their emails to her personal account and forgotten to respond. The scope of her sabotage was breathtaking. She wasn't just incompetent. She was actively undermining my ability to maintain professional relationships while simultaneously holding me responsible for the resulting problems. Every missed deadline, every confused client communication, every scheduling conflict had been deliberately orchestrated to make me appear unreliable, while positioning Madison as the solution to problems she'd created. The realization filled me with a rage so pure and powerful that it burned away every remaining trace of family loyalty. I stood up slowly, looking at Madison's expectant face as she waited for my scripted apology, and felt something inside me crystallize into unbreakable resolve. "I quit," I said, my voice cutting through the stunned silence like a blade. Effective immediately, I gathered my personal belongings while Madison sputtered protests about overreacting and not understanding the big picture. The team watched in shocked silence as I packed 8 years of awards, client testimonials, and campaign portfolios into cardboard boxes. Several employees wiped away tears as they realized the agency's most capable leader was walking away because of Madison's toxic incompetence. "You can't just abandon your family," Madison called out as I headed toward the exit. "This is bigger than your hurt feelings." I turned back one final time, looking at the conference room full of talented people who deserved better leadership than Madison could ever provide. "Good luck," I said simply, then walked out of Brennan Creative Agency forever. Freedom tasted like morning coffee in my downtown apartment, overlooking the Milwaukee River as autumn sunlight painted everything golden. For the first time in years, I woke up without dreading the workday ahead or bracing myself for Madison's latest incompetent directive. It rented a sleek modern space in the historic Third Ward, complete with exposed brick walls and floor to ceiling windows that made every sunrise feel like a new beginning. The business world's response to my departure was immediate and telling. Within 48 hours, my phone rang constantly with calls from former colleagues, industry contacts, and competing agencies expressing surprise about my decision to leave the family business. Sarah Mitchell from Apex Marketing called Tuesday morning to offer a partnership opportunity, saying her firm had been hoping to work with me for years but respected my family commitments. "We've watched your campaigns for Sunfield and Heritage Banking," she said, her voice warm with professional admiration. "That electric vehicle launch strategy was brilliant marketing psychology. We'd love to discuss bringing you aboard as a senior partner with full creative control and equity participation." Similar offers arrived daily from agencies throughout the Midwest, each recognizing my track record and eager to acquire both my expertise and my client relationships. The contrast was stark and validating. While my own family treated my abilities as disposable, the broader industry viewed me as a valuable asset worthy of genuine partnership rather than subordinate employment. Meanwhile, Madison's first week as sole proprietor of Brennan Creative Agency unfolded like a slow-motion disaster movie. Her initial decisions revealed the depth of her misunderstanding about basic business operations and client service standards that I'd established through years of careful relationship building. Tommy Rodriguez texted me Wednesday evening with updates that were simultaneously hilarious and heartbreaking. Madison had decided that the agency's award-winning presentation templates were too boring and demanded that all client materials use more dynamic designs with lots of animation and bright colors. She'd apparently discovered PowerPoint's animation features and believed that spinning text and bouncing graphics would impress sophisticated corporate clients who expected professional polish. She made me put rainbow transitions in Heritage Banking's quarterly review presentation. Tommy wrote, "Actual rainbows. For a bank." Marcus from Sunfield saw the template during our meeting today and asked if we were targeting children's birthday parties instead of automotive professionals. Madison had also instituted what she called creative brainstorming sessions, where she required the entire team to spend 2 hours every morning discussing innovative approaches to traditional marketing challenges. These sessions reportedly consisted of Madison reading marketing buzzwords from business magazines, while demanding that everyone contribute ideas that were more disruptive than conventional strategies. Yesterday, she spent 45 minutes explaining why we should use Comic Sans font for Midwest Manufacturing's industrial equipment brochures. Tommy continued. She said serif fonts were intimidating to modern consumers and that playful typography would make heavy machinery seem more approachable and user-friendly. The staff exodus began almost immediately. Jennifer Walsh, our senior account manager, submitted her resignation on Thursday with a departure letter that tactfully referenced philosophical differences about client service standards and professional communication protocols. Jennifer had managed Heritage Banking's account for 3 years, building relationships that generated over $2 million in annual revenue through consistently excellent service and strategic thinking. By Friday afternoon, 3 more resignations had arrived. David Park from Digital Marketing, Amanda Foster from Creative Development, and Carlos Hernandez from Account Coordination. Each cited career growth opportunities and expanded responsibilities elsewhere, but the timing made Madison's role in their decisions obvious to anyone with basic reasoning skills. The departing employees had been the agency's backbone, handling complex projects and maintaining client satisfaction, while I focused on business development and strategic planning. Their combined expertise represented decades of experience and millions in client relationships that Madison apparently believed could be easily replaced by hiring fresh talent with modern perspectives. Client confusion escalated throughout the week as Madison attempted to assert control over accounts Shed never understood. Midwest Manufacturing's procurement director called Wednesday morning to clarify conflicting information about their spring catalog project timeline. Madison had told them the materials would be ready in 2 weeks, despite the project requiring photography, copywriting, design, and printing processes that typically took 6 weeks minimum. We've scheduled our product launch around the timeline Brennan Creative provided, the client explained during a tense conference call. If those materials aren't ready when promised, we'll need to postpone a multi-million-dollar campaign that involves coordinated advertising across 12 states. Madison's response demonstrated her complete lack of understanding about production workflows and vendor coordination. "Well, just work faster," she said confidently. "Modern technology makes everything more efficient than traditional timelines suggest." The client's silence spoke volumes about their growing concerns. Midwest Manufacturing had trusted Brennan Creative for 4 years specifically because of our reliable delivery schedules and realistic project planning. Madison's casual dismissal of established procedures suggested either incompetence or dishonesty, neither of which inspired confidence in her ability to manage critical marketing materials. Heritage Banking expressed similar concerns about Madison's sudden changes to their established communication protocols. They'd grown accustomed to detailed status reports, proactive problem-solving, and immediate responses to urgent requests. Madison's version of improved client service apparently consisted of weekly check-in calls where she provided vague updates about exciting creative developments without specific timelines or deliverable previews. "We're not sure what's happening with our holiday campaign," Heritage's marketing director confided to Jennifer during her final week. "Madison keeps talking about revolutionary approaches to financial marketing, but won't show us actual concepts or explain the strategic foundation. We need to see materials soon to meet our December launch deadline." But the most concerning development was Madison's complete inability to maintain the sophisticated relationship ID cultivated with Sunfield Motors. Marcus Chen had invested 3 years working with me to understand his company's unique positioning challenges and target demographic complexities. Our collaboration had produced consistently successful campaigns because we'd built mutual respect and shared strategic understanding. Madison apparently viewed this relationship as easily transferable rather than carefully earned. She'd begun contradicting Marcus during meetings, dismissing his concerns as traditional thinking while offering alternatives that ignored market research and industry best practices. The electric vehicle campaign represented their largest marketing investment in company history, and Madison was treating it like a college thesis project rather than a multi-million-dollar business initiative. She told Marcus his demographic data was outdated, reported Angela Santos. Hod remained at the agency to support her family but was documenting everything in case she needed to find new employment. She actually said that market research from last year was irrelevant because consumer preferences change monthly in the digital age. Marcus just stared at her like she'd spoken in tongues. The final straw for several clients came when Madison announced her new collaborative decision-making process that would involve clients in daily creative choices rather than trusting professional expertise to guide campaign development. She apparently believed that successful marketing resulted from democratic input rather than strategic thinking based on data analysis and industry knowledge. She wants Heritage Banking's executives to vote on font choices and color schemes. Angela texted me Friday evening. She thinks client involvement in micro decisions will make them feel more invested in campaign success. Their marketing director looked physically ill when Madison explained the new system. By the end of Madison's first week as sole owner, Brennan Creative Agency had lost 30% of its experienced staff, confused multiple major clients, and created workflow chaos that would take months to resolve even with competent leadership. The agency ID spent 8 years building into a regional powerhouse was imploding under Madison's management in real time, validating every concern ID raised about her qualifications. Yet, my phone remained silent from family members who might have acknowledged the obvious disaster unfolding. Dad was apparently maintaining his support for Madison's leadership transition, while Mom continued prioritizing family harmony over business reality. Their silence spoke volumes about their commitment to defending their decision regardless of consequences. The irony was both tragic and liberating. Id finally escaped an environment where competence was punished and favoritism rewarded, while Madison was about to learn that inherited authority couldn't substitute for earned expertise. The agency's collapse would be painful to watch, but it would also vindicate every argument Id made about the importance of merit-based leadership in competitive industries. Monday morning brought news that made my coffee taste like victory and vindication combined. Angela Santos called at 7:30 with an update that confirmed my worst predictions about Madison's upcoming presentation to Sunfield Motors. The meeting was scheduled for Wednesday afternoon, and Madison had spent the weekend completely revamping the electric vehicle campaign without consulting anyone who understood automotive marketing or demographic targeting. She threw out your entire strategic framework, Angela whispered, clearly calling from a bathroom or supply closet to avoid being overheard. Everything you developed about targeting environmentally conscious professionals with established careers and stable housing. She's convinced that marketing electric vehicles to college students will revolutionize the industry because young people are naturally more open to innovative technology. The strategy was so fundamentally flawed that I almost felt sorry for Madison. Almost. Sunfield's electric vehicles started at $42,000, required home charging installations costing another $3,000 to $5,000, and appealed primarily to buyers who prioritized environmental responsibility over immediate cost savings. College students and recent graduates represented the exact opposite of viable customers. Limited income, temporary housing, budget, focused transportation needs, and minimal concern about long-term environmental impact. She's designed the whole campaign around spring break destinations and music festival sponsorships, Angela continued. The tagline is, "Charge your lifestyle, change your world." She wants to partner with energy drink companies and social media influencers who promote adventure sports. The concept was so divorced from market reality that I wondered if Madison was deliberately sabotaging the account or simply possessed no understanding of consumer behavior whatsoever. Sunfield had invested 18 months researching their target demographic, conducting focus groups, and analyzing purchase patterns before concluding that successful electric vehicle adoption required customers with specific financial and lifestyle characteristics. Marcus Chen had shared this research extensively during our collaborative strategy development, explaining that early adopters were typically established professionals who could afford premium pricing, owned homes with garage access for charging installations, and made vehicle purchase decisions based on total cost of ownership rather than immediate sticker price. They were environmentally conscious but pragmatic, seeking reliable transportation rather than lifestyle statements. Madison's alternative approach ignored every piece of data in favor of assumptions based on her personal preferences and social media consumption habits. She apparently believed that marketing electric vehicles like smartphones would attract younger buyers who valued innovation over practicality, despite overwhelming evidence that vehicle purchases involve different psychological and financial considerations than consumer electronics. The presentation graphics look like they were designed for a nightclub, Angela said, her voice mixing disbelief with professional embarrassment. Neon colors, dubstep background music, and photos of people dancing at outdoor concerts. She keeps calling it experiential marketing that creates emotional connections with aspirational demographics. Tuesday brought increasingly frantic activity as Madison attempted to prepare for Wednesday's presentation without understanding the fundamental concepts she needed to discuss. She'd apparently spent Monday evening researching disruptive marketing strategies on Google, rather than reviewing Sunfield's product specifications, competitive analysis, or customer research data. Tommy Rodriguez sent me photos of the presentation slides through encrypted messaging, and the visual evidence was worse than I'd imagined. Madison had created a 60-slide PowerPoint featuring animated lightning bolts, pulsing neon graphics, and celebrity photos she'd downloaded without permission or context. The slide titles included Electrify Your Social Experience, Power Up Your Personal Brand, and Sustainable Living for Instagram Influencers. The content was equally problematic. Madison had fabricated statistics about millennial purchasing power and Generation Z environmental activism without citing sources or acknowledging that her target demographic lacked the financial resources to purchase $40,000 vehicles. She'd included cost comparisons showing electric vehicles as cheaper than gas cars by calculating savings over 20 years while ignoring higher upfront costs and financing challenges for young buyers. Most concerning was her complete misunderstanding of Sunfield's brand identity and market position. The company had built its reputation on reliability, innovation, and practical environmental responsibility. Madison's campaign positioned them as a trendy lifestyle brand competing with luxury sports cars and premium consumer electronics rather than efficient transportation solutions for thoughtful consumers. She doesn't understand that Sunfield competes with Toyota and Honda, Angela explained during another whispered phone call. She thinks they're trying to be Tesla's cool younger brother instead of their practical, affordable alternative. The whole campaign assumes customers buy cars to impress friends rather than solve transportation needs. Wednesday afternoon arrived like an execution date marked on everyone's calendar. I found myself checking my phone constantly, wondering how spectacular Madison's presentation disaster would be, and whether Dad would finally acknowledge the obvious truth about her qualifications. Part of me hoped she'd somehow succeed despite her obvious limitations, but rational analysis suggested the meeting would end badly for everyone involved. Marcus Chen had invited his entire executive team to review Madison's revised campaign strategy, including the CEO, CFO, and head of product development. Sunfield was preparing to launch their most ambitious marketing initiative in company history, with an annual budget exceeding $11 million and expectations for measurable sales impact within 6 months. The presentation began at 2 o'clock, and Angela managed to text periodic updates despite the professional chaos unfolding in real time. Madison's opening remarks apparently focused on paradigm shifts in automotive consumer behavior, without acknowledging that her proposed strategy contradicted Sunfield's extensive market research and competitive analysis. She's been talking for 20 minutes about generational purchasing disruption while Marcus' team exchanges confused looks. Angela texted, "Nobody understands what she's trying to say or how it relates to selling electric vehicles to actual customers." The campaign reveal was met with stunned silence that stretched uncomfortably long before Marcus attempted diplomatic questions about demographic targeting and budget allocation. Madison's responses demonstrated complete ignorance about fundamental marketing concepts like customer lifetime value, acquisition costs, and conversion funnel optimization. She just told the CEO that market research is backward-looking data that prevents companies from recognizing emerging opportunities, Angela reported. He asked for specific examples of successful automotive campaigns targeting college students, and she said Tesla's success proved young people were ready for electric vehicles, despite Tesla's average customer being 47 years old. The meeting deteriorated rapidly as Madison's presentation revealed deeper layers of incompetence and misunderstanding. She'd apparently confused correlation with causation throughout her analysis, assuming that young people's environmental concerns automatically translated to electric vehicle purchasing power despite obvious financial barriers. Marcus attempted to guide the discussion toward practical considerations like dealership partnerships, financing options, and charging infrastructure availability in target markets. Madison dismissed these concerns as traditional obstacles that innovative marketing can overcome, suggesting that successful advertising would somehow solve fundamental logistical and financial challenges. The CFO asked about return on investment projections. Angela's final text read, Madison said calculating ROI was limiting creative thinking because transformational campaigns create value that can't be measured in spreadsheets. The entire room went silent. The presentation ended without the enthusiastic approval Madison had expected. Sunfield's executives promised to review the materials carefully and consider various strategic approaches. But their body language and polite deflections suggested serious concerns about campaign viability and agency competence. Marcus requested a private follow-up meeting with Madison to discuss implementation details and timeline considerations, which everyone understood meant he would attempt to salvage the relationship by diplomatically expressing reservations about her proposed strategy. The conversation reportedly lasted 90 minutes and concluded with Marcus asking for additional time to evaluate alignment with company objectives. By Friday afternoon, the devastating news arrived through official channels. Sunfield Motors was terminating their contract with Brennan Creative Agency, effective immediately. The termination letter, which Angela photographed and sent through encrypted messaging, cited fundamental misalignment of strategic vision and execution capabilities as justification for ending their 7-year relationship. But the humiliation extended beyond simple contract termination. Sunfield demanded full refund of advance payments totaling $2.3 million, claiming failure to deliver promised strategic capabilities and citing specific examples of Madison's presentation as evidence of agency incompetence. They were essentially arguing that Madison's performance was so inadequate that it constituted breach of contract rather than mere disappointment. The public relations damage was equally catastrophic. Sunfield's press release announcing their new agency relationship included pointed references to seeking proven expertise in automotive marketing and demographic analysis, which industry insiders immediately recognized as criticism of Brennan Creative's recent performance under new leadership. Word spread quickly through Milwaukee's marketing community about Madison's spectacular failure and Sunfield's dramatic termination. Competing agencies began reaching out to other Brennan Creative clients, suggesting that the Sunfield disaster indicated broader problems with agency leadership and strategic capabilities. The $11 million loss represented more than just revenue reduction. It was a complete destruction of credibility that threatened every remaining client relationship and future business opportunity. Madison had not only failed to execute a successful campaign but had actively damaged the agency's reputation through her public incompetence and professional malpractice. The phone call that changed everything arrived at exactly 2:47 in the morning, shattering my peaceful sleep with the electronic scream of family desperation. Dad's name glowed on my bedside table like an accusation, and his voice cracked through the speaker with an emotional intensity I'd never heard before in my 31 years of life. "Lily, please, you have to help us," he whispered into the darkness, his words tumbling over each other in panicked confession. Madison lost Sunfield Motors. The whole account, $11 million, gone. They terminated the contract and demanded refund of advance payments. "We're facing bankruptcy if we can't fix this situation immediately." I sat up slowly, processing the magnitude of catastrophe he was describing while feeling absolutely zero surprise about the outcome. Madison's incompetence had been obvious from the beginning, and her spectacular failure at Sunfield was as predictable as sunrise following sunset. The only shocking aspect was how quickly her limitations had destroyed relationships I'd spent years building. "They're not just terminating," Dad continued, his voice breaking with each revelation. Marcus Chen called this afternoon to inform us that Sunfield's contract termination triggered review clauses in 3 other major accounts: Heritage Banking, Midwest Manufacturing, and Patterson Electronics are all reconsidering their relationships with us because of what happened with the electric vehicle campaign. The domino effect was devastating but entirely logical. Sophisticated clients paid attention to agency performance with other accounts, understanding that campaign failures often indicated broader competence issues rather than isolated mistakes. Madison's public humiliation at Sunfield had essentially advertised her incompetence to the entire Milwaukee business community. Combined annual revenue from those 4 accounts is $15.7 million, Dad said, his accounting precision intact despite emotional breakdown. "If we lose them all, we're looking at company closure within 60 days. Everything your grandfather built, everything we've worked for, completely destroyed." The irony was both tragic and satisfying. Dad was finally experiencing the consequences of prioritizing family politics over professional competence, learning that business success required earned expertise rather than inherited authority. The agency's collapse was entirely preventable if he'd chosen merit. based succession instead of gender-based favoritism. Madison is overwhelmed, he admitted. The understatement of the century delivered with touching sincerity. She's trying her best, but these client relationships are more complex than we realized. The strategies and processes you developed over 8 years, we may have underestimated their importance to our success. Underestimated. The word hung in the air like smoke from a house fire, representing years of dismissed expertise and ignored achievements. Dad was essentially confessing that my contributions had been systematically minimized, while Madison's potential was systematically overestimated, resulting in predictable disaster when reality met fantasy. "I need you to come back," he said, his voice carrying the desperate authority of someone accustomed to having requests fulfilled without question. "Just temporarily, just long enough to stabilize these client relationships and help Madison understand the strategic frameworks you established. Family has to support family during crisis." Family. The word that had justified years of favoritism and exclusion was now being deployed as emotional manipulation to solve problems created by that same favoritism. Dad apparently expected family loyalty to work in both directions, despite demonstrating complete disregard for fairness or respect when making succession decisions. Mom's voice joined the conversation, her tone mixing guilt with maternal manipulation perfected through decades of conflict resolution. "Lily, sweetheart, I know you're hurt about how things developed, but we can't let pride destroy everything your grandfather spent his life building. This is bigger than personal feelings or temporary disagreements." Personal feelings. Temporary disagreements. The systematic discrimination and professional humiliation ID endured was being reframed as emotional overreaction rather than legitimate response to genuine injustice. Mom was essentially asking me to pretend that years of mistreatment never happened in order to solve problems caused by that same mistreatment. "Madison realizes she made some mistakes," Mom continued. "But she's family, and family means supporting each other through difficult learning experiences. She needs your guidance and expertise to develop into the leader we know she can become." The concept was breathtakingly presumptuous. Madison had been given complete authority specifically because Dad believed she was ready for leadership responsibility. Now that her incompetence was proven beyond denial, I was expected to provide training and support that should have preceded her appointment, not followed her failure. "We're not asking you to give up your independence," Dad said, his tone shifting toward negotiation. "You could return as a consultant with significant compensation and decision-making authority. Madison would maintain the CEO title, but you'd have real influence over strategic direction and client relationships." The offer was simultaneously insulting and revealing. Dad still believed that titles and authority should belong to Madison while actual work and responsibility belonged to me. He was proposing a system where I'd solve problems created by Madison's incompetence, while she received credit for any resulting success. "Think about the employees," Mom added, playing her strongest emotional card. "Tommy, Angela, Jennifer," before she left. "These people depend on agency success for their livelihoods. They're innocent victims of this situation, and they need your help to preserve their careers and support their families." The manipulation was sophisticated and targeted, exploiting my genuine concern for hardworking people who'd been caught in the crossfire of family politics. But I recognized that saving their jobs would require enabling Madison's continued leadership, ensuring that future disasters were inevitable, regardless of temporary solutions. The conversation continued for 47 minutes, cycling through every possible angle of persuasion, manipulation, and emotional blackmail. Dad offered increased salary, profit sharing, public recognition, and formal authority over strategic decisions. Mom emphasized family unity, shared responsibility, and generational legacy preservation. But during their lengthy appeals, additional information emerged that transformed my anger into something much colder and more final. Madison hadn't just failed at client relationships and strategic thinking. She'd been systematically liquidating company assets and transferring money to personal accounts for business investments that were actually lifestyle expenses. We discovered some irregularities in financial management, Dad admitted when pressed about cash flow problems beyond lost revenue. Madison was exploring new investment opportunities and growth strategies, but some transfers weren't properly documented according to standard accounting procedures. Investment opportunities, growth strategies, The euphemisms barely concealed what was obviously embezzlement or gross financial mismanagement. Madison had been treating company resources as personal funds while demonstrating complete ignorance about business operations and fiduciary responsibility. "How much money are we talking about?" I asked. My voice steady despite rising fury about the additional layers of Madison's incompetence. "Approximately $400,000 over 8 weeks, Dad said quietly. She was funding what she called market research and competitive analysis, but the expenses included personal travel, entertainment costs, and consulting fees for friends without relevant expertise or formal contracts. $400,000 in 8 weeks. Madison had been stealing money while destroying client relationships, combining financial fraud with strategic incompetence in a spectacular display of comprehensive business failure. The agency wasn't just facing revenue loss from client departures, it was hemorrhaging cash through Madison's criminal mismanagement. She claims everything was legitimate business development, Mom said defensively. But some vendors and consultants can't provide detailed documentation about services rendered or results delivered. Madison says the accounting irregularities are temporary oversights that can be resolved with better bookkeeping procedures. The explanation was pathetically inadequate. Madison had essentially looted company accounts while failing at every aspect of leadership responsibility, creating financial crisis through both incompetence and potential embezzlement. Dad was asking me to return and fix problems that included possible criminal activity as well as business failure. "Madison is the CEO now," I said, my voice carrying finality that cut through their desperate appeals. "She wanted complete control and authority, and you gave it to her. These are the consequences of her decisions and your choice to prioritize family politics over business competence." "But your family too," Dad protested, his voice carrying wounded surprise that I wasn't automatically willing to rescue them from self-inflicted disaster. "This affects all of us, not just Madison. Your success is connected to our success. My success," I replied, "is connected to competence, integrity, and earned respect, none of which were priorities when you made your succession decision. Madison has complete authority to handle this crisis, using whatever leadership skills convinced you she deserved to inherit the business." "You can't just abandon everything," Mom said, her voice rising with maternal authority that had influenced my decisions for 3 decades. "This is your grandfather's legacy, your family's heritage. You have a responsibility that goes beyond personal hurt or professional disagreements." "My responsibility," I said firmly, "was fulfilled through 8 years of exceptional performance that generated millions in revenue and built relationships you're now desperate to preserve. I created value that Madison destroyed through incompetence you chose to enable despite obvious warning signs." The silence that followed was profound and telling. Dad and Mom had apparently expected family guilt to override professional principles, assuming that blood relation would automatically motivate me to solve problems created by their favoritism and Madison's failures. "Let your CEO daughter handle it," I said finally, using the title they'd chosen to grant her despite complete lack of qualifications. "She has 100% ownership and authority. Time for her to earn what she inherited." I ended the call and turned off my phone, sitting in darkness while processing the full scope of devastation Madison had created in just 8 weeks of leadership. The agency's collapse was comprehensive: lost clients, departed employees, financial fraud, and destroyed reputation. Recovery would require competence and integrity that Madison had never demonstrated and apparently couldn't develop. But more importantly, I finally felt complete freedom from family expectations and obligations that had never been reciprocated. Dad and Mom had made their choice about whose capabilities they valued and trusted. Now they could live with the consequences of that decision without manipulating me into providing solutions they didn't deserve. 6 months later, I stood in the gleaming conference room of Barrett Creative Solutions, my own agency housed in a renovated warehouse overlooking Lake Michigan. Sunlight streamed through floor to ceiling windows as I reviewed contracts representing $8.3 million in annual revenue with clients who'd eagerly followed my expertise rather than stay trapped in the wreckage of Brennan Creative Agency. Marcus Chen sat across from me, signing the final paperwork for Sunfield Motors' new relationship with my firm. "I should have reached out immediately after your departure," he said, his relief evident in every word. "We wasted 2 months trying to work with Madison before admitting the obvious truth about where the real strategic talent resided." "Hello," I'm delighted to assist you with our voice services. Choose a voice that resonates with you, and let's begin our creative audio journey together. Hello, I'm delighted to assist you with our voice services. Choose a voice that resonates with you, and let's begin our creative audio journey together. Hello, I'm delighted to assist you with our voice services. Choose a voice that resonates with you, and let's begin our creative audio journey together. Milwaukee Business Journal featured my entrepreneurial success story as their cover article, highlighting the rapid growth and client satisfaction that validated merit-based leadership over inherited authority. Speaking invitations arrived from marketing conferences throughout the Midwest, with organizers specifically requesting presentations about building agency culture around competence rather than politics. Lily Barrett's story demonstrates how talent finds its proper level when freed from artificial constraints. The Business Journal article concluded, her agency's success proves that expertise and integrity create more sustainable value than family connections or inherited positions. But the most satisfying validation came from watching Madison face genuine consequences for her comprehensive failures. Brennan Creative Agency officially declared bankruptcy on March 15, unable to meet basic operational expenses after losing $15.7 million in annual revenue through client departures and contract terminations. The financial investigation revealed that Madison's business investments constituted clear embezzlement totaling $600,000 over 12 weeks. Federal prosecutors filed criminal charges for wire fraud and tax evasion, with evidence including Madison's use of company funds for personal vacations, luxury purchases, and payments to friends without legitimate business purposes. The defendant systematically transferred corporate assets to personal accounts, while misrepresenting the nature and purpose of these transactions. The prosecutor explained during Madison's arraignment, "This wasn't poor judgment or inexperience. It was deliberate theft, disguised as business strategy." Dad faced professional humiliation as industry publications covered Brennan Creative's collapse, with specific mention of his questionable succession planning and failure to prioritize competency over nepotism. The Milwaukee Business Council removed him from their advisory board after 37 years of membership, citing concerns about his decision-making judgment and fiduciary responsibility. Robert Brennan's choice to transfer control to an unqualified family member rather than his obviously competent daughter represents a case study in how personal bias destroys business value, wrote the Milwaukee Marketing Association in their quarterly newsletter. This disaster could have been prevented with merit-based leadership succession. The family reckoning was slow but inevitable. Mom finally confronted Dad about his years of favoritism after watching Madison's criminal charges dominate local business news. Their marriage counseling sessions apparently focused heavily on Dad's inability to acknowledge competence when it challenged his gender preferences and family hierarchy assumptions. "I enabled Robert's delusions about Madison's capabilities because I wanted family harmony," Mom admitted during our first conversation in 8 months. "I prioritized keeping peace over acknowledging obvious truth, and it destroyed everything your grandfather built while nearly destroying your career." The personal transformation was profound and liberating. Free from family manipulation and workplace politics, I'd discovered genuine confidence and authentic relationships based on mutual respect rather than inherited obligations. Barrett Creative Solutions employed 32 people who chose to work with me because of proven competence, not genetic accident. I've learned more about strategic marketing in 6 months here than I did in 3 years at the old agency, said Rebecca Martinez, a recent Northwestern University graduate whose creative insights were valued and developed rather than dismissed or stolen. This is what professional growth feels like when competence is rewarded instead of punished. The success extended beyond business metrics into personal fulfillment I'd never experienced while trapped in family dynamics that punished excellence and rewarded manipulation. Every client relationship was built on earned trust rather than inherited expectation. Every strategic decision was evaluated on merit rather than political convenience. Barrett Creative Solutions was now generating more annual revenue than Brennan Creative Agency had achieved at its peak, with client satisfaction scores and employee retention rates that exceeded industry averages. The contrast demonstrated how much potential had been suppressed by family politics disguised as leadership development. But perhaps the most meaningful vindication came from the broader industry's response to my story. Young women in marketing reached out regularly, sharing their own experiences with family businesses that prioritized sons over daughters despite obvious competence differences. My success became proof that merit ultimately prevails when talented people refuse to accept artificial limitations. You showed me that family loyalty shouldn't mean accepting professional disrespect, wrote Jennifer Walsh, who'd left Brennan Creative and now ran her own successful consultancy. Sometimes the greatest gift your family can give you is showing you exactly who they are, so you can choose exactly who you want to become. The life lesson crystallized through months of reflection and healing. Authentic success comes from honoring your own capabilities rather than seeking validation from people who refuse to see your worth. Family should support your growth, not constrain it through political convenience or inherited biases. Standing in my agency's conference room, surrounded by talented colleagues and successful campaigns, I realized that Dad's favoritism had actually been a liberation disguised as rejection. Madison's incompetence had revealed the toxic family dynamics that would have limited my potential indefinitely if I'd remained trapped in their dysfunction. Success isn't inherited through family connections or genetic lottery. It's earned through competence, integrity, and the courage to value yourself when others won't. Sometimes walking away from people who don't appreciate your worth is the only way to find people who do. The phone call that had once felt like devastating rejection now seemed like the beginning of everything I'd actually wanted. Respect earned through excellence, relationships built on mutual value, and success achieved through merit rather than manipulation. Madison had done me the greatest favor imaginable by forcing me to discover my own strength outside family limitations. Justice was served not through revenge or confrontation, but through the simple truth that competence creates lasting value while favoritism destroys it. It built something beautiful from the ashes of their discrimination, proving that talent finds its proper level when freed from artificial constraints. Barrett Creative Solutions continued growing, powered by the revolutionary concept that good work deserves recognition, regardless of who produces it. And I continued growing too, finally free to become the leader I'd always been, underneath years of family politics and inherited limitations. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where family politics or workplace favoritism prevented your talents from being recognized? How did you handle feeling undervalued by the people who should have supported you most? Share your experiences in the comments below, and don't forget to like this video if it resonated with your own struggles with family expectations and professional growth. Subscribe for more stories about finding your worth when others can't see it. And please share this video with anyone who might be facing similar challenges with family businesses or workplace discrimination. Thank you for listening to my journey from family rejection to professional triumph, and I hope it inspires you to value your own capabilities even when others don't. Until next time, remember that your worth isn't determined by family politics or inherited positions. It's created through your own competence, integrity, and courage to build something better.